My name is Nakhman Dushansky. I am a state security officer, a KGB captain of the USSR. During the war, I served in special NKVD units, participated in battles near Smolensk, and in operations against punitive forces. After the war, I headed the Department for Combating Banditry in Lithuania, awarded the Orders of the Red Star and the Patriotic War, medals for courage and for battle merit. This is my story, from the prison cells of my youth to the struggle against the armed underground, which I waged for decades. I was born in 1919 in the Lithuanian city of Šiauliai. My grandfather, Yakov Dushansky Kogan, was a Nicholas soldier from the Cantonists, participated in the Crimean War and the defense of Sevastopol. For his service, he received the right to live outside the Pale of Settlement into a land allotment. But my grandfather refused it, returned to Vilnius, and raised 13 sons there. He managed to give most of them an education. My father, Noah Dushansky, fought on the fronts of the First World War. In battle, he was poisoned by gases, became a German prisoner of war, and returned home almost blind. In 1915, when the Jewish population was expelled from Vilnius, our family found themselves in Šiauliai. My father got a job as a porter at the train station, transporting goods and parcels with a handcart, and we, the children, helped him, reading addresses and accompanying him. My mother, Friedel, came from a very poor family. Together with my father, she raised us, 5 children. At 5 years old, I was sent to study in a private cheder and later to a school organized with funds from local philanthropist Frenkel, owner of a leather factory. I finished 6 grades, but already at 13, I went to work. We lived in a proletarian district where Poles and Russian old believers lived alongside Jews. This environment shaped my worldview. At 14, I met the underground activist Grinfeld, and that's when my path into the underground struggle began. At 14, I finally made my choice. Meeting the underground activist Grinfeld, who later died at the front, became a turning point. He drew me into underground communist work, and I joined the underground Komsomol of Lithuania. In my heart, I wanted to fight for a better lot for the poor working people, and this feeling only grew stronger. In Šiauliai, in the building of the Jewish Central Bank, under a large safe, in a narrow niche that only a thin teenager could squeeze into, there was a hiding place with underground literature. I was responsible for this hiding place and for distributing the materials. The literature was passed to reliable people in surrounding towns and villages. This work was dangerous, but I felt proud to be a part of it. The communist underground in Lithuania was heterogeneous. In the illegal party, led by Snechkus and Angeretis, Lithuanians predominated. Among Jews, the workers' organization Bund had more influence. But there were no serious disagreements in the ultimate goals between us. We all believed in one thing, the necessity of fighting against injustice in the bourgeois government. During this time, I became increasingly aware that I was not just becoming a teenager, but a part of a larger movement. My worldview was formed on the streets, among workers, and the underground became a natural continuation of this life for me. I was ready for whatever lay ahead. The struggle of the underground could not long remain unnoticed. In Šiauliai, the secret police was led by a former Tsarist gendarme, Aukštakalnis, an experienced and cruel man. In 1935, he managed to infiltrate an agent into our organization. 2 comrades and I were arrested. We were beaten with rubber truncheons, but I did not reveal the hiding place with the literature. The police never found evidence, and we were released. However, in 1936, the situation changed. After the peasant uprising in Suvalki, instigated by German special services, the authorities decided to toughen measures. 4 of the leaders of the uprising were shot. In response, we distributed leaflets condemning the verdict, but a mass roundup soon followed. 9 people, among them 5 Lithuanians and 4 Jews, were captured. 7 were sent to a tribunal. Levinas and I were sent to a juvenile correctional facility in Kalnaberja. We remained there until we reached the age of 17, after which we were transferred for trial in Šiauliai. By this time, we learned that our comrades had already been convicted. Nehama Špait received 15 years, others from 10 to 14. Our tribunal was headed by Colonel Leonis. Given our age, we were sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. Initially, we served our sentence in Šiauliai prison. Then we were transferred to a new political prison in Raseiniai. Thus began my youth, spent behind bars, where I had to learn what it meant to be a political prisoner in bourgeois Lithuania. The prison in Rossini was new, built according to an Italian design, with a high stone building and an internal well in the center. The cells quickly became overcrowded, and soon 4 people were sitting in solitary confinement. In total, there were about 240 prisoners there. This place was considered relatively calm, especially compared to the Kaunas Fortress 9th Fort, where prisoners, along with criminals, were broken by hard labor. The food was meager, but we didn't starve. Bread, milk, potatoes, cabbage soup. Parcels that arrived through MOPAR were of great importance. We saved food for comrades in solitary confinement. Inside the prison, there was an unwritten order. We were led by an underground committee. Older comrades, experienced communists, former Lithuanian army officers and engineers, guided us and maintained discipline. I, as the youngest and knowing languages, was appointed as a negotiator with the administration. Communication was maintained through hiding places in the toilets where we left notes. Sometimes during searches I had to swallow letters so they wouldn't be found. Among the guards there were sympathizers through whom we kept in touch with the outside world. Solitary confinement was the harshest punishment. A stone sack without heating, a floor covered with water, 3 days on bread and water, standing, without sleep. I had to experience this myself, and only my youth helped me endure. Nevertheless, there were bright sides to this prison. I was able to finish 8 grades of school by correspondence, completing assignments sent by my sister. In the cells, we discussed events in Europe, sensing the coming war. We knew that Lithuania would face a difficult ordeal, and we understood, if the Germans came, it would be a death sentence for us, Jews and communists. On June 19, 1940, the doors of our cells opened, and we were told that we were free. We were given 24 hours to pack and say goodbye to our comrades. Tables were set right outside the prison, locals brought food, and we celebrated our liberation. No one tried to take revenge on the guards. There was no reprisal. I stood in my prison uniform because the clothes I was arrested in had long become too small after 4 years of imprisonment. From the new government led by Paleckis, we were brought clothes and transport was arranged to Kaunas. There we were accepted into MOP, and then everyone went home. I returned to Šiauliai to my mother and father. I brought my first salary home, but my mother didn't touch the money. She didn't believe that such amounts could be earned honestly. Even after my second salary, the money lay untouched. She considered it someone else's and thought I had stolen it. Only when comrades came with their parents and convinced her that it was honest earnings did she agree to take it and went shopping with me. Then I bought my first watch and a leather coat. Soon we were given Soviet passports and party cards. Former political prisoners were the first to receive them. In August 1940, I received a summons to the Red Army. My new era was beginning under the banners of Soviet power, and soon I was to serve in the NKVD. After my liberation and receiving my party card, I was called to the military commissariat. The underground leaders persuaded me to go and serve in the NKVD. My senior comrade, Maskevicius, already appointed head of department in Šiauliai, offered to take me on. But I refused. I said, I am local and you will constantly ask me about every person who is a bourgeois, who is a nationalist. I am not an informant. I asked to be sent to the border troops. They respected my wish. After interviews, I was assigned to the operational section of the NKVD district department in Telšiai as an assistant operative. At first, I wore a tunic with green cadet collar tabs without rank. Only shortly before the war did I become an operative. The department staff was small, about 20 people. Among them were former Lithuanian underground fighters and experienced Russian operatives, such as Morozov and Galkin. We had 3-ton trucks. The district was divided into zones of responsibility. My partner was Lipa, an old communist who possessed intuition and rare discernment. Our task was to combat enemy agents in the border zone. From the winter of 1941, border crossings became almost daily. Agents trained in Abwehr schools, saboteurs, and members of the Lithuanian Activist Front came from Germany. Many were armed, and firefights became commonplace. In the spring alone, we detained more than 40 agents with radio transmitters. A woman nicknamed Pani Yakini, the wife of the former head of Lithuanian intelligence who had fled to Germany, played a special role. We managed to re-recruit her, and from her, we received valuable information that helped us intercept saboteurs. In the spring of 1941, we seized a bundle of leaflets with the inscription, "Open Only," on June 22, 1941. They openly stated that Hitler would liberate Lithuania from the Jewish Bolshevik yoke. They also contained a point saying that anyone who had collaborated with the Soviets and wanted to atone for their guilt should kill a Jew and provide proof. For us, this was a terrible harbinger of the coming catastrophe. In the summer of 1941, I was on vacation at home in Shalyai. The morning of June 22nd became fateful for me. I came to my parents. My father, almost blind, stood at the gate waiting for me. He said, "Nakhman, take your weapon and go to your own. If the Germans come, you will be killed first." I took 2 pistols and a leather coat from the hiding place, but most importantly, I decided to save my parents. We went to the train station, where a train ready for evacuation stood. I put them in a car, said goodbye, and jumped onto the last train leaving for Telšiai. But that train never reached its destination. It was bombed near Trishkiai station. I survived, opened the department's secret mobilization package, which indicated the gathering point for staff in case of war. I reached there on horseback. By evening, border guards and NKVD personnel began arriving in the forest, many wounded, bloody, with captured weapons. I, however, was in a clean tunic and leather coat and stood out sharply. We began retreating towards the Latvian border, fighting our way through encirclement. Every day there were battles, German attacks from the front and rear. We had to destroy groups of German paratroopers. The losses were heavy, but on July 2nd, we reached Pskov. I was wounded by a grenade fragment in the leg, but I kept going, fearing to fall behind. In Pskov, we were caught by Stalin's speech, "Brothers and sisters," broadcast from loudspeakers. But the city was soon surrendered, and we managed to break out to Dino Station, and from there left for Leningrad. We looked like fanatics, ragged, bloody, with German weapons, but our fighting spirit remained. In Leningrad, we were washed, changed clothes, and then sent to the city of Molotov, where all NKVD workers from the Baltic states were gathered. We were divided into groups and given new uniforms. It was then that I learned the tragic truth. The train with evacuees from Shalyai, on which I had left my parents, never departed. The evacuation was canceled, deemed a panic. My parents, younger brothers and sister were killed in the ghetto or shot attempting to flee. Only my brother Yakov survived. This news burned my soul, and from that moment on, I had nothing left but service and revenge against the enemy. In the autumn of 1941, we, former NKVD officers from the Baltic states, were transferred to Moscow. The command explained that during a difficult time for the country, Comrade Stalin wished for Baltic Chekists to guard him in the Kremlin, just as Latvian riflemen once guarded Lenin. For us, this was considered a great honor. Straight from the station, we were sent to guard the Kremlin. We received new white sheepskin coats, felt boots, checked our weapons and ammunition. For 6 days, we stood in the open air by the Kremlin walls, ready to meet a possible German landing. The weather was unsuitable for flying, so there were no bombings. Hot food and tea were brought directly to our posts. Every day, we received new passwords and responses. On November 7th, we were already in the cordon on Red Square during the parade. I saw Stalin from afar, just a figure 100 meters away. It was a moment that I remembered for life. After the parade, we were taken to the Central NKVD school. There we rested, took a bath, and soon received a new assignment. Instead of the front, we were to undergo training. In the area of the Vistral courses, we spent the entire winter chopping wood to heat buildings in Moscow. We, the Chekists, turned into lumberjacks. We were fed sparingly. We searched for leftover potatoes and beets in the fields under the snow. On Sundays, we were taken to a bathhouse in Moscow. Each of us wrote reports asking to be sent to the front or to our national units. But the answer was always the same: the time will come. Only in the spring of 1942 were we returned to serious studies. That's when the real classes began. In the spring of 1942, our lives changed. We returned to the NKVD school and real classes began. First, we were taught Russian, as most of us had a poor command of it. Then came the main course: intelligence work, interrogation tactics, enemy psychology, the specifics of the German army and police. We were prepared not for the front or for deep behind enemy lines, but as special groups that would operate in liberated territories, identifying agents, policemen, traitors, and punitive forces. Our studies lasted 12-14 hours a day. We were taught recruitment, methods of working with agents, secret informants, and sympathizers. Separate subjects were devoted to rules of conduct in enemy territory, how to behave among Germans, how to recognize their customary habits, how to distinguish a Wehrmacht soldier from a Gestapo officer. Lectures were often given by anti-fascists, former Wehrmacht soldiers who had come over to our side. Combat training also received attention. We practiced hand-to-hand combat, wielded knives, fired various types of weapons, and knew how to set ambushes and capture tongues, prisoners for interrogation. However, we were taught sabotage superficially. We couldn't blow up a bridge or a train. That wasn't our area. In the winter of 1943, I received my first officer rank, Junior Lieutenant of State Security, which was equivalent to a senior lieutenant in the Army. Later, I became a captain. The training was tough, but we understood that real work awaited us soon. Sometimes we were sent on assignments, to the front or the rear, to apply our skills in practice. But most of the time was spent on preparation. All this time, we waited for the day when we would finally be sent to the front lines. In the summer of 1943, the order came. We were gathered without our belongings, leaving all personal property, and sent to the front. The first point was Gzhatsk, where we began our frontline practice. Then we were transferred near Smolensk to the village of Kuznetsovo, and later to the newly liberated Smolensk. The city lay in ruins. Among the intact buildings, only the old prison remained. There, within the walls that had been used by both the NKVD and the Gestapo, we were quartered. We were assigned special tasks to infiltrate behind German lines and, even before the arrival of Soviet troops, to capture or eliminate punitive chiefs, commandants, police leaders, officers responsible for massacres of civilians. These were political actions to show the people that retribution was inevitable. In Lubovici, together with partisans, we captured the entire top leadership, the commandant, the burgomaster, and the chief of police. 2 days later, the Red Army entered there, and we already held a troika of prisoners. A military field tribunal arrived in the town. A trial was held in the market square. People gave testimony, especially against Police Chief Zhurikin. He shot Jews, raped women, persecuted partisan couriers. Everyone hated him. On the same day, the verdict was announced, death by hanging. Soldiers quickly erected gallows. In the evening at sunset, the sentence was carried out. For us, it was not just a completed task, but a symbol of retribution that caught up with traitors and murderers. Thus began our frontline work. We followed the advancing troops, caught collaborators, carried out pinpoint operations in the rear, and cooperated with partisans. Our skills, acquired at the NKVD school, proved entirely useful. We knew how to act silently, how to capture tongues, how to hide, and how to instill fear. This was our real war. In the summer of 1944, when Lithuania became Soviet again, I was assigned to serve in the Countess GB Directorate. I ended up in the 5th Department, specifically in the OBG, the anti-banditry unit. This was a key unit, attracting all forces and attention, because it was here that the fight against the armed underground, saboteurs, and former punitive forces was concentrated. In Lithuania, there were 4 GB directorates, in Vilnius, Kaunas, Šiauliai, and Klaipėda. Each was responsible for its own territory, and in 1953 they were merged into a single Republican one, located in the capital. The 5th Department was considered the main one in these directorates. It had different directions, working with the clergy, with the intelligentsia, but the central unit was precisely the OBG, that very anti-terrorist department, as it would be called today. Our OBG had 32 officers, and all of them were experienced, had been through the war, and knew what battle and death meant. We dealt with those who remained in the forests, who awaited the return of the Germans or help from the West. My duties included searching for punitive forces with blood on their hands, combating the anti-Soviet underground, and saboteurs who were parachuted in from abroad. For operations, we had an entire regiment of internal troops under our command, where former partisans and border guards served. These men knew how to fight, and they could be used in the most complex and dangerous operations. There was also an NKVD troop school in Kaunas, where young soldiers were taught everything required for anti-partisan warfare. How to navigate the forest at night, how to set ambushes, how to destroy bunkers. I came to this unit young, but already with combat experience and frontline hardening behind me. Soon I was entrusted with leading a group, and later the entire department. And from this began a long and difficult period of my life, the fight against those we called bandits. When the Red Army entered Lithuania, it seemed at first glance that everything had calmed down. In most of the Republic, resistance was weak. In the forests, there remained about 3,000 to 4,000 former punitive forces from Lithuanian police battalions and officers of the old army, as well as about 500 saboteurs who had been trained in German schools and left behind enemy lines. But they acted cautiously. They hid in bunkers and caches, attacked single vehicles, small garrisons, hawks, and killed chairmen of village councils. Their raids did not have a large scale. It was particularly bloody in the Vilnius region, where Polish Home Army units operated alongside Lithuanians. There, the fighting was fierce, and there were enough casualties on both sides. But overall, in the Republic, until the winter of 1945, the situation remained under control. Sometimes tragedies occurred in the territory that immediately told us that it was not a local gang operating. In May 1945, near the 9th Fort, an entire family was massacred. I noticed that a piece of satin tablecloth was neatly cut from the table in the house, apparently for footcloths. Nearby ran a railway on which trains were heading east, to the future war with Japan. We checked the trains, gave an orientation, and 2 weeks later the gang was found already beyond the Urals. These were 7 servicemen, and one of them had exactly that piece of red satin among his belongings. But the turning point came later. In 1946, after Churchill's speech in Fulton, the real Cold War began, and this immediately affected Lithuania. The rebels believed that the West would come to their aid and began to act more actively. In southern Lithuania, a former officer of the Tsarist and Lithuanian armies, Staniskis, nicknamed Litas, issued leaflets calling for preparation for an atomic bomb. Soon his group massacred the Russian population of the village of Obsutai. From this moment on, there was a sharp increase in activity. The rebels began mobilization, new districts were created, and the underground became more active. We understood. A real war was beginning, now not with the remnants of the punitive forces, but with a well-organized anti-Soviet movement supported from abroad. 1946 became a turning point. After Fulton, the partisan movement seemed to come alive. Mobilization swept through the villages. Young men were forcibly driven into the forest. Army deserters and draft dodgers massively swelled the ranks of the gangs. No longer dozens, but hundreds of people gathered in detachments, and these detachments united into districts. Headquarters began to operate. Underground newspapers and leaflets were published. Southern Lithuania was particularly active. There, former officer Staniskis, nicknamed Litas, fought. He distributed leaflets, "Prepare for an atomic bomb," assuring that a war between the USSR and the West was about to begin, and then Lithuania would become independent. His group was distinguished by its cruelty. In the village of Obsutai, they massacred Russian families, sparing no children. I saw the protocols of those murders, and the scenes of atrocities are still before my eyes. In those years, émigré organizations abroad became particularly active. VLIC and BDPS created underground structures, sent instructions and money. We intercepted their couriers, and each time we found materials, appeals, and directives from abroad. By 1947, partisan detachments had grown to tens of thousands. Former police battalions, SS members, and just criminals hid in the forests. Many villages fed and supported them, often out of fear. There were enough deserters from the Red Army. They left with weapons, joined the Forest Brothers. According to our data, in the Kaunas district alone in 1946-1947, several hundred such fugitives were counted. It was in these years that I realized that the fight against banditry was turning into a full-scale war. This was no longer a hunt for individuals, but a real front. And we, the OBG officers, found ourselves on the front line. In those years, the situation in the Republic was tense, but the party leadership sought to maintain a firm line. The first secretary of the Central Committee, Snežkus, said, "In Lithuania, we have the same war as in Spain in 36. There were international brigades against fascists, and here we have the Red Army against the underground." This comparison was often heard and determined the approach to what was happening. Moscow demanded decisive measures, but here on the ground, Snežkus and his entourage understood. The problem could not be solved by purely military force. Yes, internal troops conducted operations, surrounded forests, destroyed bunkers, but that was not enough. The emphasis was placed on political steps, amnesties, appeals to come out of the forest, promises to those who surrendered voluntarily. In 1945 and 1946, such campaigns were announced several times. Many surrendered, especially peasants who had been driven into the forest by force. But the most fierce, former officers, punitive forces, SS men, remained and continued the struggle. The majority of the Lithuanian population accepted Soviet rule. People were tired of war, of occupations, of constant fear. Many saw that life was gradually improving. Schools were opening, collective farms were producing bread, prisoners were returning. But the fear of bandits was immense. In the villages, chairmen of village councils were killed in front of their families, teachers were beaten for teaching in Russian, ordinary people were punished just for going to the village council. We understood. The struggle was not just with weapons, but with minds. That is why for us, OBG officers, one of the main tasks was not only to eliminate the gangs, but also to show people that Soviet power was strong, that it would protect them. And the harsher the Forest Brothers acted, the clearer it became to the population that behind them stood not freedom, but blood and terror. One of the most important directions of our work was the exposure of punitive forces. When our troops entered Lithuania, we managed to seize the archives of the Gestapo and the Abwehr. There were lists of police battalions, agents, interrogation protocols. Based on these, we compiled a card index. Thousands of names. We searched for people who participated in the shootings of Jews, in the burning of villages, in punitive expeditions throughout the Republic. There were cases when luck helped us directly during an operation. That's how we detained Agent Brusketis, codenamed Primus. He carried a thick diary, a neat notebook where he recorded everything: meeting places, passwords, who was killed, and how many cartridges were spent. In his belongings, we found a whole death accounting. These records became evidence in court, and he himself testified against other gang members. I remember the story of Kalman Lurie. In 1941, his entire family was shot. Years later, he came to us and said that he recognized one of the murderers working in Vilnius. We checked his information, and everything was confirmed. The murderer served in the police and then hid under a false name. He was arrested, and Lurie identified him personally. Such moments showed that time does not erase crimes, and retribution still comes. We especially sought out Schwartz, nicknamed Yoda's Black. This was a man who, during the occupation, abused prisoners, personally participated in torture. He hid for a long time, changed documents, went to other areas. But we still found his trail. The operation to detain him lasted weeks, but he was captured alive. His trial became a show trial so that everyone would see that no new life under a false name would save one from the past. For us, this was not just service. We understood. As long as these people remained free, they would drag others along with them, bringing Lithuania back to bloodshed again and again. Therefore, the search for punitive forces and traitors became our constant work, and we brought every case to its conclusion. Force alone could not solve the problem. We understood. In the forest and underground, there were not just bandits, but people who had connections, meeting places, agents. To break their networks, cunning was needed. Intelligence work became the main weapon. We created our own anti-Soviet movement. One of our men was Agent Markulis, who had been through German camps. His code name was Eagle. We built a legend around him. He supposedly returned from the West, had a mission to fight the Soviets. He began to be perceived as a real leader, and many groups submitted to him. The entire Forest Brothers movement in a number of areas came under his control. Through him, we received all information about leaders, contacts, and couriers. Sometimes we created false partisan groups. They acted like real ones. They went through villages, distributed leaflets, and even carried out attacks. But in reality, these were our people. Through such groups, we identified those who helped the gangs, who supplied them with food, weapons, and sheltered the wounded. But these operations were very risky. If they were exposed, death was inevitable. Special attention was paid to infiltrating headquarters. Our agents, disguised as fugitives, draft dodgers, or former police officers, infiltrated the leaders' circles. There, they became trusted people and then transmitted information to us about the location of bunkers, attack plans, and couriers from abroad. Thanks to this, entire detachments could be destroyed without heavy losses. We knew, without intelligence, the war against the underground would drag on for decades. But with the help of agents, we managed to seize the initiative. Sometimes one person, who passed information to us at the right time, saved an entire district from a bloody night. Although we worked in Lithuania, Moscow was always behind us. All key operations were directly supervised. We were subordinate not only to the Republican administration, but also to the center, and this was felt in everything. Every major action was approved in Moscow. Orders came with the signatures of people like Pitovranov, Leontiev, sometimes even Beria himself. In the beginning, generals often came, inspected our actions, demanded reports. We knew any decision could be revised up there, and therefore we acted strictly according to instructions. Sometimes I was called to Moscow to report. I also had the opportunity to be there. In the office, there are several generals sitting at once. Maps, cases, photographs lay before you. They ask about every detail: who led the operation, who infiltrated, what evidence there is. They did not forgive mistakes there, but if the work was done precisely, they valued it. Such leadership, on the one hand, constrained us, and on the other, gave us confidence. We knew behind us was the power of a vast country. We had support and resources. In Lithuania, the underground believed that the West would soon help, but we understood. We were not just fighting a regional department, but the entire state machine. This gave us firmness. We felt part of a larger cause. Moscow set tasks. We carried them out. And every successful detention or liquidation had not only local, but also all Union significance. Operations against the leaders of the underground were of particular importance. Their figures were symbols, and as long as they remained free, the war in the forest would not end. One of the first was Žemaitis. He had served in the Tsarist army, served the Germans, and commanded large detachments. He was considered the general of the Lithuanian resistance. We captured him alive. Interrogations were conducted in Moscow. He was offered to address his comrades, but he refused. The court sentenced him to death by firing squad. Thus ended his story. Another was Ramanauskas, nicknamed Vanagas. He started in 1941, participated in massacres of Jews and Soviet activists, and later headed an entire district. For many years he hid, changed meeting places and apartments. He and his wife went underground with false documents, working as teachers. But intelligence work paid off. They were identified and arrested. He was tried as a leader and murderer, and the sentence was also death. Luksha gained particular fame in the West. He was younger than the others, but he also began with murders in 1941. Then he emigrated, went to France, collaborated with the Americans. He was trained as a saboteur and parachuted back into Lithuania with a group. We knew about him in advance. The intelligence network provided information about his plans, but it was not possible to capture him alive. He died in a shootout. Each such case was a blow to the underground. After the arrest or death of leaders, entire districts disintegrated, fighters surrendered, and some fled abroad. We understood. The struggle was not only with weapons, but with symbols. And when the symbols fell, the resistance weakened. Years have passed, and today in Lithuania, those whom we captured as bandits and murderers are often called heroes. Monuments are erected to Žemaitis. Ramanauskas is honored as a fighter for independence. Luksha is depicted on stamps. But for me, an eyewitness of those years, this always sounds sacrilegious. I remember their deeds, the executions of women and children, burnt villages, torture of prisoners. These heroes are up to their elbows in blood, and it is impossible to wash it away. Accusations are often leveled against us, that we engaged in genocide, mass deportations, torture. I always say directly, I did not participate in this. My job was different. I fought with weapons in hand against armed individuals. I searched for punitive forces, those who themselves committed murders. I was involved neither in deportations nor in torture. This can be confirmed by any document. They also tried to accuse me of the so-called Raininii massacre, where bodies of shot people were found in 1941. But at that time, I was in the army, fighting on the front, not in the rear. These accusations were lies, an attempt to blacken my name. I always acted according to my conscience and my duty. For me, the enemy was anyone who killed civilians, who raised a hand against Soviet power with a weapon. And if such people received a verdict, that was justice. Today I see how Lithuania tries to rewrite the past. Bandits and executioners are called heroes, and those who fought them are declared criminals. These are double standards, but memory cannot be deceived. I remember how Lithuanian battalions in 1941 shot Jews at pits, how people were driven to executions not by Germans, but by local policemen. The Germans themselves were sometimes fewer than the Lithuanian assistants. And now to pretend that this did not happen means to close one's eyes to one's own history. For me, everything is clear. I was loyal to Soviet power my entire life. I knew that I was fighting for a just cause. We protected people from terror, restored order, punished those who were up to their elbows in blood. I never considered myself an executioner. I was a soldier of this war, a soldier to the end. Time has passed and much is trying to be forgotten or distorted, but I am sure the truth will remain. Let them talk about heroes. Let them raise them to a pedestal. But the blood of women, children, and old people will forever remain behind them, and behind me will remain the memory that I fought against them and fulfilled my duty.